So last time we looked at for loops, and before that we looked at while loops. There's one more type of loop that you want to know in Java, and that's the do while loop. Okay, so what we've got here to start with is a while loop where we prompt the user to enter a statement. We collect that information with the next line function, and then while that statement is not equal to exit, we continue collecting statements and outputting them to the console. Once they type in exit, that is going to break the loop and will come down and print thanks for playing. So what we could do to clean this up a little bit is to use a do while loop. So instead of a while here, we're going to change this to do, okay, and then we'll take this while and we're going to move it outside of our loop. Okay, so we're going to do this, what's in here, while the statement is not equal to exit. Or by doing that, now we don't need anymore to have this up here. We can move it down. Actually, we need to move it down more. So we're going to move that down after we collect the statement from the user. Okay, and then instead of changing the statement, we're just going to go ahead and let that prompt be the first statement that's captured. So we're going to go up here and get rid of these lines. Okay, so we've got our scanner instantiated. Now we're going to do what's inside of this block of code. We're going to prompt the user for a statement. We're going to capture that information with the next line method, and we're going to output it. And as long as that statement is not exit, it's going to continue looping through this, this chunk of code. So let's go ahead and put our semicolon there. Oh, I need to make that a string. So string statement. And so we're going to prompt for a statement. And I can say, hello world. I could say stop, and right, none of that is picked up, but if I type exit, right, now it's going to say thanks for playing. Okay? Now, if I don't want exit to be output before the thanks for playing, I just want it to end, then I could set up a conditional statement before my print that just says that if statement, actually we can copy this here and then paste it, that'll be a little quicker. So if our statement dot equals exit, okay, if that is not true, okay, then we're going to do our system out print line statement. So let's try it again. Oops, we need our prompt. There we go. So our prompt, hello, bye, stop, and then exit. And now this time, notice when we hit we entered exit, it doesn't output. It just tells us thanks for playing. So that's a do while loop, right? It's going to always do at least one iteration of the loop, and then it'll continue cycling through as long as the while condition evaluates to true. Okay, we also looked at for loops back at the beginning of our lesson, last lesson, and in a for loop we have to have an initial value. We need a count variable. So we'll say for count equals 1. That's our initial value. And then we need a Boolean expression for when we want to stop looping. So we'll say count is less than or equal to 6, 5. And then we need to change the variable. So in this case, we're going to increment. So we're going to count from 1 to 5. And then inside the body of our loop, let's go ahead and print that count. So when we run, okay, there's our count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now to change this from a regular for loop into what's called a for while loop, okay, we can take our count variable where we started that count, and we're going to move it outside of the loop. Okay, so our count equals 1, that's now happening before the for loop, outside of the loop. And similarly, we're going to take the increment and we're going to move that inside the loop. So it's structured very much like a while loop, right? In a while loop, we would have our count starting outside. Then we'd say while the count is less than or equal to 5, and then we would increment our count inside the body of the loop. We can do that in this for while structure. We still have to remember to have these semicolons in the front, right, and in the back, because the for loop wants to have those 3 parameters separated by semicolon. If there's nothing there, then it's going to be ignored and it's going to come and test this condition. As long as that's true, it'll execute and iterate through that loop one time. And then as long as we have some kind of an increment to change our count variable inside the body of the loop, right, then this is going to be ignored and we won't get stuck in an infinite loop. So let's go ahead and run and test it out. And there's our count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like we had for the regular for loop. Okay, then let's look at some common errors when you're writing loops. So one of the most common errors is when you have your Boolean condition set up in such a way as the loop never executes, not even once. So if count is equal to 1 and we're only going to do the loop while count is greater than 5, this loop would never happen. And so we would have no output, right? That's a pretty common error. So if you are trying to troubleshoot your code, check inside that Boolean expression and see is it set up in such a way that the loop never does execute. Another common error is to try to do this for while loop, but not remembering to place the semicolons before and after the Boolean expression. Similarly, remember none of the loops, the for loop, the while loop, the do while, the for while, none of them will ever have a semicolon after the for and the Boolean expression. That semicolon would throw an error. So remember, if you're trying to debug your loops, to take a look and see that you don't have any semicolons that are misplaced. And then there's one more type of loop that we're going to take a look at, and that is called a for each loop. Okay, so let's go ahead and resave. Okay, and for each loop works with arrays. And we haven't gotten to our unit on arrays yet, but we'll go ahead and create one here by starting with a string. So we'll call this string hello world. And then we'll have a for loop, and we're going to say for the character C, and then a colon, and then s dot toChar array. And that method, toChar array, is going to take the the string S, which holds hello world, and it's going to convert that to an array. An array is just a way to organize data. So remember, we start with index 0. So the first time that we iterate through our loop, the character is going to look for the first character in this string that's been changed to an array, and that'll be index 0. So it's going to look at the H, then the E, then the L, and so on all the way through. So what I want to do inside of this loop, so open and close some braces here, is we're going to output, so we're going to output that character C that we're looping through. So since we did this as a print line, right, that would scroll the letters one per line. If I do it as a print, and then we say C plus, and then we'll add a space, right? We'll concatenate a space onto the character. That would print all on the same line, but with spaces in between. So let's go ahead and test it out. And there's our output, hello world, with spaces in between. And that's called, again, a for each loop. And that for each loop will work with any arrays.